Hello, I'm Pigments 3.5.
Howdy doody, buckaroonies, and welcome back to another thrilling episode of
Bro, what plugins do you use to make your voice sound like that?
Pigments 3.5 has landed, which means I am finally allowed to talk about this new update. It's a free update for all Pigments owners, so if you haven't already, you could pause this video and go download it to follow along as we go exploring here today. Because in this video, we're going to be covering each and every new feature that is part of the Pigments 3.5 update, so you know everything you need to go venturing boldly into the brave and wild unknown. If you'd like to see more Pigments tutorials on the channel in the future as well, feel free to leave your suggestions down in the comments. With that, let's dive in and check it out. First up, there are a couple of minor updates to Pigments 3.5 that aren't necessarily the most exciting things in the world, but they are worth mentioning. First off, a new factory preset, so no more ringing my bell for you. And we have Apple M1 compatibility, so Pigments runs native on M1 systems, which is great news for all you Mac people out there running recent systems. There are some small tweaks to some of the UI elements, mostly in the menus, just to make things a bit more clear and functional and make the workflow a bit better. And there's an update to the sampler engine. If we flick into sample mode here, there's an updated sample browser that includes categories and folders and a new preview system. So if we click a sample, we get a quick preview of what that sound sounds like. If you would like to disable this, you can click the headphone icon here. And if you want to change the preview volume, you can use the volume control here. Pigments 3.5 brings a whole mess of new wavetables to Pigments, all located under the Pigments 3.5 folder here. There's a lot of different stuff, some of it very vocal, some of it very spectral, some of it very weird, and all of it working very well for modern cutting-edge sounds and things that weren't necessarily in Pigments before. And there's a whole bunch of them that were designed by ya boy right here. These wavetables do sound great on their own, but they were designed to complement the other new features of Pigments, which we'll touch on here more in a moment. But let's take a listen to what these new wavetables sound like. The factory library of Pigments has been expanded as well with the new Pigments 3.5 factory bank. These are 150 brand new presets, including some designed by ya boy right here, that all utilize the new features of this new update. There's everything from really aggressive, snarling, modern, screaming neuro basses and growls and wobbles to huge spectral pads to generative drones to modern cutting leads to crazy sound effects and a whole lot of other stuff in between, which expands on what was already a pretty sizable and useful factory library. Let's take a listen to what some of these new sounds sound like. One of the most exciting aspects of this new update, at least in my opinion, is the new cross-modulation feature. This allows you to use Engine 1 and Engine 2 of Pigments to modulate each other, and this feature alone expands the sonic palette of Pigments significantly. Prior to this update, the modulator section of Pigments was pretty basic. We had the modulator down here. You can adjust the tuning, volume, and fine-tuning, and select between a variety of basic waveforms and noise. So we could, for example, use a sine wave to add phase distortion to another sine wave. Now, this works well, but as you can imagine, using a wavetable or something else to modulate this might be a bit more exciting, and that's exactly what this new update allows you to do. To switch modes, we'll go to the modulator here, click down, and select Engine 2. Once we do this, we now get access to coarse tuning, FM amount, fine tuning, and a ratio. If we go over to Engine 2, you can use literally any engine of Pigments, so this means analog, wavetable, sample, and harmonic, to now modulate Engine 1. Here, I've set up something in the harmonic engine that's relatively basic. If we turn this up, just kind of a strange additive sound. And mind you, we could modulate all these parameters and everything as you would normally expect. So we can turn this down, flick into Engine 1, enable it, and start bringing in Engine 2 on maybe the phase distortion. It is worth pointing out as well that each of these controls can also be modulated with any of the modulation sources in Pigments, so this opens up a pretty ridiculous amount of sound design possibilities. Here I've just tied a simple LFO to the FM amount, and we've now created a growly, snarly bass with just an LFO and some cross modulation. The comb filter of Pigments also received a few new features as part of this update. So if we go into the comb filter modes, we'll see we have feedback, feed forward, and the new low pass, band pass, and high pass filter modes. Comb filters are basically just a fancy delay. So what these new modes do is introduce a filter into the feedback loop of the delay. So if we go into low pass mode, for example, we now have a control for damping, which allows us to control the amount of low passing going on, as well as the all pass control here. This rotates the phase of things, but in lesser words, it basically just acts as kind of a fine-tuning control for the overall tone of the comb filter. If you've never messed with comb filters and physical modeling before, it is quite a bit of fun, and Pigments actually makes it really easy. So these new comb filter modes are really useful for creating plucks and bells and keys or bowed strings or any other number of things, or just adding a weird resonant character to whatever you put through it, especially as you enable keyboard tracking. So if we turn off the comb filter here, I've made just a pretty basic sound, which on its own, really not that exciting and really not that special, but by just simply adding a comb filter to it, we've now got kind of a sparkly bell key patch, which is pretty cool, and this is a really fun thing to play around with. Finally, capping things off in this update is the updated distortion module in the effects section. This brings a whole bunch of new distortion types into Pigments that are really great for super modern aggressive sounds or just adding a bit more bite and grit to things. So we've got the traditional overdrive, soft clip, hard clip, but we've also got exponential, tape, germanium, which is like a transistor distortion, asymmetrical distortion, wave folding, dual folding, stairs, push, climb, and a bunch of other ones. So here I've got just a basic sine wave loaded up, and we're gonna play that through each of these distortion modes to hear how they sound. There is a filter down here as well, so we've got high pass, low pass, and band pass modes with cutoff, resonance, routing, and a dark mode, which just shaves off some of the fizzy stuff, which can be useful sometimes. And that's a look at everything new in the Pigments 3.5 update. I think this is a pretty great update that opens up what was already a pretty interesting and versatile synthesizer to begin with in some fun new ways. What do you think of this new update? What would you like to maybe see in Pigments in the future? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. With that, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And as always, I hope this inspires you to get out there and make something awesome.